When people are talking about wine, a lot of the time they're talking about Napa. Napa is both a wine to drink and a place to visit. As a wine to drink, there's a freshness and a power and intensity that makes Napa Valley wines a standard to compare against wines from all over the world. As a place to visit, it's incredible. When people ask me, what's the best way to learn about wine, I'll often say, go to Napa Valley, where you can really see it all come together. There are three things that make Napa Valley special. One, it's the Disneyland of wine. It's like a giant amusement park for people who like to learn about wine. Secondly, a word that some people think there's no definition for, terroir. The third aspect is the people. There's a magnetism to Napa Valley that draws not just wine lovers to drink, but people who love to create wine. Let's go and find someone who's a real Napa Valley insider who can explain to us what's really going on in the Napa Valley wine scene. A great Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon can be one of the most coveted wines in the world. I'm here with Tom Peterson, and over the last 30 years, Tom has grown and made some of the greatest cabs in Napa. Tom, we hear a lot about reference to Disneyland and Napa. What's that all about?
Well, come to the Napa Valley in the summertime and you'll see a cauldron of activity. And the reason why people come there is because there's such an energy. There's so many things to see. There's so many wineries there in the small valley making different wines from different locations. You can come and learn a lot in a very short period of time in Napa Valley.
I hear a lot of reference to the word terroir, and it's been said that nobody knows what terroir means.
Well, in the classic definition of terroir is the soul of the wine being an expression of the soil and the climate, the place where it's grown. You taste the place. First of all, you've got the soils of the valley. They're very diverse here. It's a jumble of old marine layers that were pushed up by the collision of the continental plates, and then overlain with volcanic deposits, because this area has been, in the past, a volcanic area. And the climate will vary from year to year. Some years we get heavy, hot years. Some years it's a little cooler and the season is shorter.
When you make the recipe for a great Cabernet, mountain fruit versus valley fruit, what do you get out of each?
In the valley, the soils are heavier. They hold more moisture. Normally, the vines will break bud a little earlier in the season, and the vines will grow a little bit more vigorously. And that creates a different flavor profile than what we typically get on the benchlands or up on the highlands, on the mountain slopes, where the soils are much more gravelly, and there's not enough there for the vines to work with, and the vines don't grow as vigorously. They produce a tighter, darker, more dense fruit up on the mountainsides.
Tell me about Napa winemakers and their influence, and wine growers and their influence on the finished product.
It's a fantastic winemaking community, and one of the wonderful things that I've enjoyed about working in the wine business all these years is that it's a very open community. Winemakers share information and help each other and taste each other's wines, always striving to make a better and better wine. And in Napa, with its long history with Cabernet Sauvignon, it's like a magnet that's drawn talent from around the world to come and make wine in Napa.
Well, like usual, Dan's got me working out here in the warehouse, but as my mother taught me, always obey your elders.
Oh, well, obey this. Let's take a break and talk about the Cork Dorks list of 5 things to do when tasting wine, the 5 S's.
Number 1, use your sight. Lean the glass over on its side and look through, preferably over a piece of white paper or a placemat, where you can see the real difference in color. A bright red wine is probably an indication of a younger wine. If you see a little brown edge, that's a wine that's had some age. The other thing you can look for is to see how much light passes through. If you see not very much light, that's probably a pretty thick wine that's packed with flavor, and boy, this one is really dark.
Number 2, swirl. You know, it's not just something we do to look affected. Swirling, and if you're new, you don't have to do it up in the air like this. Put it down on a flat surface and give it a good swirl, because swirling causes the wine to vaporize, and it creates a little wine cloud, and those wine flavors just burst up out of the glass.
Well, Dan's talking about the swirl. That leads to the sniff, and you want to put your nose right into the glass and give it a big... See, the winemaker has packed this wine with all sorts of aromas that are at least half of the enjoyment of the wine, but you have got to put your nose in there first before you rush on to the tasting.
That leads us to number 4, our favorite, the slurp. Keith? You see, he didn't just swallow, he's slurping, and he'll continue to slurp as long as I talk. The slurp is to roll that wine around in your mouth and let that wine come in contact with your warm mouth and start to evaporate, and those vapors will go up that retronasal passage to where you'll be actually able to smell and taste at the same time. Okay, now.
Whew. I didn't know if that was ever going to happen, Dan. Yeah, that's the spit. You see, it's an important part of being an accomplished taster. You see, winemakers very often at a table at a good wine tasting will have these silver buckets there. Don't be afraid. Lean over, taste the wine, and then spit it out because, see, they know you can't taste everything at an event like that. Maybe 5, 6 wines you could actually swallow, but then after that, you're going to totally wreck your palate if you swallow everything. Go ahead. Spit the wine out, and there's an added advantage. You see that winemaker behind the table, when they see you spitting out the wine, you're not going to offend them. You're going to let them know that you're a serious taster worthy of those special bottles that are probably tucked underneath the table.
You know what, this wine is awfully good. I think we ought to just go ahead and call it a day.
Well, you know what my mom said, always obey your elders.